Okay, so 90 Day Fiancé. Season 11 gave us the franchise's first ever throuple. Matt and Amani Jlassi from San Diego, married 10 years, 2 daughters. And their Mexican girlfriend, Aguirre from Tijuana. It was supposed to be groundbreaking historic reality TV. Instead, nothing about this throuple was what it seemed. Annie's real name isn't even Annie. It's Brenda Anahi. Fans found out when her ex-boyfriend Ray came on the show and dropped the truth bomb. Ray also revealed that Annie is still legally married to someone else. Her divorce was never finalized, so Matt and Amani were planning to marry someone who was already married. Annie slept with Matt behind Amani's back, then told Amani, "I only love you, not Matt," playing mind games with both. Annie hid the entire throuple from her brother, calling Amani just a friend. Amani was in tears. Matt picked to marry Annie. Amani got 5 plastic surgeries to compete. Neither Matt nor Annie liked her new look. Amani said she was, quote, consciously harmed. By November 2025, Amani left social media to focus on her mental health. The throuple is officially over. This is the complete downfall of 90 Day Fiancé's first throuple. Real quick, let me tell you about these 3. Matt Jlassi is 36 years old, American, from San Diego, California. He's a former military man who now works as a stay-at-home dad, taking care of their 2 daughters, ages 4 and 7. He also manages the Airbnb in the guest house of their beautiful San Diego home, which sits on a hill with 360-degree views of the city and ocean. So Matt is contributing income even as a stay-at-home dad. Amani Jlassi is 30 years old, 6 years younger than Matt. Her background is fascinating. She's originally from Carthage, Tunisia, an ancient city in North Africa. She's a Bedouin woman, grew up in a very conservative male-dominated culture, left Tunisia at just 18 years old to build a better life in America. Amani speaks 4 languages fluently: Arabic, French, English, and some German. Her mother and grandmother were born in Germany, so she has this incredibly diverse cultural heritage. Amani now works in the tech industry, very successful. She calls herself, quote, a boss bitch. She's calling the shots in her marriage. Matt takes a more submissive role to her. Amani is also openly bisexual. She and Matt had explored polyamorous relationships before. This wasn't their first time bringing in another partner. Then there's Aguirre, or should I say, Brenda. She's 37 years old, older than both Matt and Amani, from Tijuana, Mexico. A single mother with her own daughter, close in age to Matt and Amani's kids. And her occupation? A stripper at a Tijuana club. So, the origin story here is actually 2 stories. First, Matt and Amani. They met on Tinder when Amani was in college. Amani thought Matt had a good heart. Matt felt like Amani was truly there for him. Classic Tinder college match. They got married, had 2 daughters, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. Built a life in San Diego. They even did a Netflix show before 90 Day Fiancé. It was called How to Get Rich with financial expert Ramit Sethi. On that Netflix show, Amani was earning big money in tech, while Matt had, quote, no financial access. Regular marriage money issues. Important note. On that Netflix show, Matt and Amani showed 0 signs of wanting a third partner. So, the throuple idea came after Netflix. Second story, how they met Annie. Matt and Amani were on vacation in Mexico. They went to a strip club in Tijuana, and here's the specific detail. A bartender at the club introduced them to Annie. Annie was working there as a stripper. The language barrier was significant. Annie's English was limited. Matt and Amani's Spanish was limited. But the connection was immediate, despite everything. According to Amani's People magazine interview, they never set out to add a third partner. It was completely spontaneous. They stayed in touch, kept coming back to see Annie, and eventually, this became a serious throuple relationship. Spanning about a year before, they signed up for 90 Day Fiancé. For about a year, Matt, Amani, and Annie tried to make this long-distance throuple work. Matt and Amani in San Diego, Annie in Tijuana, which is literally just across the border, so proximity wasn't terrible. They spoke every day. They knew each other's children. They celebrated holidays together, when they couldn't be together physically, according to their season 11 debut episode, they got creative with intimacy through, quote, role-playing. Yeah, they kept the spice alive through role-playing scenarios over video calls. That was shown in the premiere. But there was a huge problem with the throuple dynamic from day one. Annie was mostly attracted to Matt. She and Amani had a friendly relationship, but not the same deep romantic bond. Amani would later reveal that she and Annie had never been intimate alone together. All their intimate moments happened with Matt present. That's a massive red flag, because a real throuple means all three people are romantically involved with each other. If it's just two people who both happen to be intimate with a third, that's not a throuple. That's polygamy with a queer aesthetic. Amani started feeling like the odd one out in her own throuple, even though the whole thing was her idea in the first place. Matt and Amani wanted Annie to move to San Diego permanently. Here's the plan. Yeah. Divorce their 10-year marriage on paper just to be able to marry Annie. Because polygamy is not legal in America. This plan had so many problems fans immediately started listing. What about their 2 daughters? Custody arrangements, health insurance, financial planning, inheritance? What about Amani feeling secure while her husband was legally single and preparing to marry another woman? And here's the kicker. Matt and Amani hadn't even started the divorce process. They were just talking about it. Their lawyers hadn't been consulted. Nothing was set in motion. Screen Rant openly questioned whether this plan would ever happen. Their skepticism turned out to be justified, because the throuple broke up before any of this could happen. But even more importantly, nobody knew yet that Annie herself was still legally married to someone else. That bombshell was coming. Here's something important. This throuple was Amani's idea, not Matt's, not both together. Amani drove this entire thing. After meeting Annie at that Tijuana club, Amani was the one who decided she wanted to pursue a throuple. And Amani fell in love with Annie first, then convinced Matt to make Annie his girlfriend too. Matt was actually initially skeptical. His concern, he thought, if Amani wanted another woman in the marriage, maybe there was something he wasn't fulfilling for her. Maybe her being bisexual meant she needed something he couldn't provide. Matt's own words, quote, "The more we talked about it, the more we opened up to the idea together." So Amani had to convince Matt to agree. He eventually did. But that context matters, because it later became a huge fight about who the throuple was really for. Matt would later say the throuple was for Amani, to explore her bisexuality. But Amani would later say she was making sacrifices for Matt, that she was going through this whole thing for him. Both blaming each other, neither taking ownership. Meanwhile, Annie was watching all of this from Mexico, planning to work every angle. Let's talk about the first moment that broke the throuple. Matt and Amani flew to Tijuana on season 11 to spend 2 weeks with Annie and meet her family. This was supposed to be their bonding trip, a chance for the throuple to solidify in Annie's home country. Then, Amani discovered something devastating. Annie had told her brother that Matt was her boyfriend. And Amani was just a, quote, friend. That's right. Annie hid the entire throuple from her own family. Told her brother the whole story was that she was dating an American man named Matt. And Amani was just his wife, who happened to come along. Amani was humiliated. She was left in tears. Because if Annie was willing to publicly deny the throuple to her own brother, was this ever real? Was Amani ever going to be accepted as an equal partner? This was devastating on so many levels. It validated Amani's insecurity that Annie preferred Matt. It meant Annie was ashamed of the throuple. It meant Annie wasn't willing to fight publicly. It meant Annie might hide Amani from her family forever. Amani cried on camera. Matt tried to smooth things over. Annie tried to explain, but the damage was done. However, this was just the first layer of what Annie was hiding, because someone else was about to show up who would blow the whole thing wide open. Enter Ray, Annie's ex-boyfriend. Matt and Amani decided to meet with Ray because they wanted to learn more about Annie's past, get to know her better, understand who they were about to bring into their family. Ray was more than willing to help because Ray knew things about Annie that Annie hadn't told Matt and Amani. Ray dropped his first truth bomb. He called Annie by her real name, Brenda. Annie broke down in tears. She was upset that Ray had revealed her real name without her consent, furious that he'd shared personal information. Amani was confused because Amani had known Annie for a year and had never once heard the name Brenda. Annie explained through tears, quote, "My real name is Brenda Anahi. For this, for Anahi, I use Annie." So Annie was short for Anahi, which was her actual first name, sort of, because her real legal name was Brenda Anahi, and she'd been going by Annie the whole time. Amani had a devastating realization in that moment. She had never booked a flight for Annie, never seen her ID, never seen any legal document with Annie's name on it. For a year, she'd been in a relationship with someone whose real name she didn't know. Fun fact, Annie goes by Hani Aguirre on Instagram, adding another name variation to the confusion. But Ray wasn't done. He had a second truth bomb ready. Ray revealed that Annie was still legally married to someone else. Her divorce had never been finalized. When Ray had been dating her, he had even consulted a lawyer about helping Annie get a green card. And the lawyer told him it wasn't possible because Annie was still married. So let me spell out how insane this is. Matt and Amani were planning to divorce their 10-year marriage, to bring Annie to America on a K-1 visa, to marry her. Except Annie was already married to someone else, legally. Annie couldn't even legally accept a K-1 visa or marry Matt. The entire plan was based on a lie. As if that wasn't enough, there was another layer. Annie slept with Matt behind Amani's back. This wasn't a group throuple thing. This was Annie and Matt having sex without Amani knowing. Just the two of them, multiple times based on reports. Then, and this is the manipulative part, Annie went to Amani, told Amani, quote, "I only love you, not Matt." Tried to convince Amani that Annie's real love was for her, not for Matt. But Annie was actively sleeping with Matt behind Amani's back. Amani started to realize the pattern. Annie was telling everyone what they wanted to hear. Told her brother she was with Matt, not throuple. Told Amani she really loved only Amani. Slept with Matt privately without Amani. Annie was playing all three roles depending on who she was talking to. Playing everyone. And Matt? Matt had feelings for Annie. He'd caught real feelings. So even though he'd secretly slept with her, he was probably being manipulated too. Annie told him what he wanted to hear as well. According to Screen Rant analysis, Annie's behavior suggested she may not be in love with either of them and could be using the situation for financial gain. That's the polite way of saying Annie might have been in this throuple for the American green card, not for love at all. Fans were shocked. Amani was destroyed, Matt was confused, and Annie was still holding all the cards. After filming season 11 wrapped, Amani underwent 5 major plastic surgeries. Let me list them. 5 major procedures in a short period. That's a lot of surgery to recover from. Amani made herself almost unrecognizable from the woman fans had seen on season 11. Her face was different. Her body was different. Everything was different. At the season 11 tell-all, Amani explained why. She felt pressured from social media, from her partners. She wanted to compete with Annie, wanted to look a certain way. Basically, she was trying to physically compete with her own girlfriend, and she went through major surgery to do it. But here's the tragic twist. Amani regrets the surgeries. She said she feels she, quote, lost pieces of herself. And even after all that, Matt and Annie didn't even like her new look. She went through major surgery, lost her identity, spent tens of thousands of dollars, and it didn't accomplish what she'd hoped. Now, knowing what we know about Annie, Brenda, still married, sleeping with Matt behind Amani's back, the surgeries hit even harder. Amani destroyed herself, trying to compete with someone who was never worth competing for. The season 11. Tell-all aired in 2 parts. Part 2 on June 29th, 2025. Hosted by Sean Robinson from Access Hollywood. It was one of the messiest reunions in franchise history. Matt and Amani discovered more secrets about Annie. The full details weren't publicly released outside the episode. Amani broke down about her plastic surgeries, the pressure, the regret, the identity loss. Then came the fight between Matt and Amani. Matt claimed the throuple was really for Amani, said she wanted to live a, quote, gay lifestyle. And the throuple was her way to explore that. Amani fired back. She said she was making sacrifices for Matt. She was going through divorce for his benefit. Everything was for him. The couple that had spent all of season 11 saying this was a mutual, loving decision were now at the tell-all blaming each other. After the tell-all, Amani made an Instagram post that hinted at massive relationship problems. She used the phrase, quote, consciously harmed, serious language, suggested Amani felt she'd been emotionally hurt knowingly by someone in the throuple. Annie responded to fan speculation by liking a comment that said, quote, I don't think they are throupling anymore. I don't think it worked out. Good for you guys. Live your best life. That was basically Annie confirming the throuple was over. The throuple has officially broken up. Annie Aguirre, or Brenda Anahi, has not moved to America. Annie is not with Matt and Amani anymore. The K-1 visa plan never happened. The divorce never happened. Because Annie couldn't legally get a K-1 visa while still married anyway. Matt and Amani appear to still be married to each other. They're in San Diego with their daughters, but their marriage has been severely strained by everything that happened. Recent update, in November 2025, Amani left social media entirely to focus on her mental health. That's how badly this whole experience affected her. She needed to disconnect from everything to recover. Matt has been posting more actively. He recently posted something that fans read as a dig at Annie. The caption started with nothing, suggesting Annie was nothing to him now. The three of them do still occasionally appear on social media together, but many fans believe that content was filmed earlier and is being released gradually. Because there's no recent proof they're actually together as a throuple, Annie has been quiet online too, probably back in her regular life in Tijuana. Whatever her real name and marital status truly are, that's her private life now. Thoughts, tone, wrap up. That's the complete story of 90 Day Fiancé's first ever throuple, Matt, Amani, and Annie, whose real name is Brenda Anahi, from a Tinder college match, to a Netflix show, to a Tijuana strip club where a bartender changed their lives, to a year of role-playing long distance, to a divorce plan, to a brother's secret, to an ex named Ray dropping truth bombs about fake names and secret marriages, to Annie sleeping with Matt behind Amani's back, to 5 plastic surgeries, to a broken throuple. Honestly, this whole thing was never real. Annie was hiding her identity, her marriage, and her true feelings. Matt was being manipulated with private intimacy. Amani was being manipulated with declarations of love. And the whole throuple was probably a green card play from the start. The real victims here are Matt and Amani's 2 daughters, 4 and 7 years old, who watched their parents almost destroy their marriage over someone who wasn't even honest about her own name. If you want more 90 Day Fiancé breakdowns like this one, subscribe. I've got more coming. Drop a comment. Was this the worst 90 Day Fiancé throuple ever? Or was Annie playing everyone from day one? Let me know. See you in the next one.